Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. I'm Associate Professor Dr. Asmady Idris from International Relation Program, Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, University Malaysia, Sabah. First of all, I would like to thank for the organizer because accepting my paper for this INSLA seminar. So my topic for INSLA seminar is on Malaysia's religious deviant policy and the impact on its bilateral relation with Iran. So my focus of study is how does Malaysia's religious deviant policy, especially on Shia ideology, affect its bilateral relation with Iran. As we know, Shia Ja'fariyah or SYARIAH or 12 Imams sect is the official theology for the Islamic Republic of Iran since 1979. And then Malaysia has legally gazetted Shia is one of the deviant teachings in Islam. Therefore, to what extent Malaysia's religious decree in this fatwa on Shia could jeopardize Malaysian relations with Iran. That's my focus of study. My conceptual framework, I'm using a foreign policy framework. Malaysia foreign policy framework to analyze the impact of Malaysia's deviant religious policy, especially Shia, on its relations with Iran. Then my methods in data collections, it's a combining of fieldworks, reviews, and documentary analysis. First, we begin with the arrival of Islam in Malay Archipelago. There are so many theories. The famous theorist is the one who brought Islam to Malay Archipelago were the Arab traders or preachers, especially from Al-Husain's descendants from the line of Bani Alawi of Hadramaut, the chief disseminators of Islam in the Malay Archipelago. This is written by Al-Atas. Then it's specifically referred to Imam Mohamad Sahib Marbat and his descendant who spread Islam in the Malay Archipelago and established some kingdoms in this land. And then there are the traders from China and Gujarat and even Persians came to Malay Archipelago to spread Islam among the local community. On Malaysia's early relations with Iran, in fact, Malaysia's diplomatic relations with Iran began after its embassy set up in Tehran in 1973. And then Iranian embassy was established in Kuala Lumpur in 1980, 10 years after. Then prior 1979 revolutions, Iran was governed by the Pahlavi dynasties. But 1979 Islamic revolution erupted, then Iran changed into an Islamic Republic and Ayatollah Khomeini proclaimed as the supreme religious leader. And after that, Shia Ja'fariyah or SYARIAH or 12 Imam sect has been the dominant Islamic theology for Iran since 1979 until today, or since the Safavid era in the 16th century. What happened after Iran becoming the Islamic Republic of Iran? But Malaysia keeps its bilateral relations with Iran flourishing despite realizing the potential spread of Shia ideology among Muslim communities. Nothing happened. Malaysia maintained its mutual relation with Iran, although Iran has become Islamic Republic. However, to avoid the spread of Shia ideology, the government issued religious decree on Shia based on of the deviant teachings. This is based on the Article 2 for state law and in respect of the Federal Territories of Kuala Lumpur, Labuan and Putrajaya. Federal law may control or restrict the propagations of any religious doctrine or belief among persons professing the religions of Islam. In other words, within the context of Christians, anything related with religion, it is under the state law. So this is the where the fatwa on Shia comes from. Then why Shia considered deviant in Malaysia? So according to national fatwa of the Malaysian Religious Council, it has issued 2 resolutions to curb the spread of Shia. First in 1984, where it only allowed 2 Shia sects, Zaidiyah and Ja'fariyah, to be practiced in Malaysia. But in 1996, all Shia groups are deviant, considered deviant. So 1984 fatwa was annulled. This is after being found that the basic beliefs and practices of Shia is found contradict with Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah theology, especially on the issue of the caliphate or imamah, the Ka'amut'ah, infallible 12 imams, and others. Although in 2004, Malaysia, as the member of the OIC, support the OIC position on Shia based on the Aiman message 2004, where Shia, along with 8 madhab, was considered as Muslims. Even in 2005, former Prime Minister Tun Abdullah Badawi, among the signatories, was among the signatories along with Sheikh Al-Azhar, Ayatul Sistani, and Sheikh Qadawi, to consider, to support OIC position on Shia. But in 2011, at domestic level, Malaysia reiterated its stance on Shia as deviant teachings in Malaysia. Despite Malaysia's deviant religious policy on Shia, its bilateral relation with Iran remains intact. Diplomatic visits continue traveling between Malaysia and Iranian leaders. And even the historical moment was the visit by the former president of Iran, Mohamad Khatami, to Malaysia on July 21 until 24, 2002. During this meeting, MOU of economic cooperation was signed in the areas of tourism, trade agreement, and the agreement on the promotion and the protections of investments. And then the diplomatic visit continued. For example, in 2008, Tun Abdullah Ahmad Badawi visited Iran and signed 3 agreements on cooperation in technology, anti-drug campaign, income manufacturing. 2013, Tun Dr. Mahathir attended Hassan Rouhani's inauguration ceremony as the new president of Iran. And the latest 2019, President Hassan Rouhani attended the Kuala Lumpur summit. And this year, 2020, President Hassan Rouhani congratulated Malaysia's Independence Day and even invited the King of Malaysia to pay a visit to Tehran for talks about the Muslim problems in Iran's initiative for peace and stability. And apart from that, Malaysia's economic activities also maintained. For example, Malaysia's trade with Iran enhanced between 2012-2013, and it valued at 4.5 billion and 3.26 billion ringgit respectively. However, due to US sanctions on Iran, the trade volume for both countries has slightly decreased, especially this year's. For example, 2009, Iran exported about 246.93 million to Malaysia, and 2009 also Malaysia exported to Iran about 395.5 million to Iran of mainly palm oil, natural rubber, machinery during the year. but down by 16.34% and 19.27% in tonnage and value, respectively. Malaysia actually has been criticized heavily from human rights perspective due to Malaysia religious degree on Shia. But as a sovereign country, Malaysia is a free country. Therefore, it has a free hand to manage its matters without any interference from outside. However, in justifying Malaysia's deviant policy against Shia for the Iranian government, Malaysia firmly reiterating this is merely a domestic matter and it will be dealt with by the relevant authorities. Even former Foreign Minister Dato' Sri Mohamad stressed the importance of Iran by saying Iran is an important partner to Malaysia, and it is Malaysia's foreign policy to be friendly with all countries based on mutual respect, foster goodwill and cooperation in all areas of interest for mutual benefit. So while bilateral relations between Malaysia and Iran remain harmonious, although the issue of Shia, so there are a few factors. First, Shia is only domestic issue for Malaysia. So every sovereign countries, including Malaysia and Iran, has its own domestic policy. No interference from outside. Second, Malaysia's foreign policy since 1970 has been neutral, non-aligned, and to be friend with all countries, irrespective of political ideologies and socio-economic. Does include Iran. Therefore, Malaysia-Iran's relation is more on diplomatic and socio-economic interactions. See, although Malaysia joined Amman Message 2005, it is of course a sign of Muslim global solidarity, where after the post-Ottoman era, Muslim layer or political entities disintegrated. So rather than taking confronting approach, Malaysia Malaysia and all Muslim countries must building commonalities as this is the best recipe to strengthen unity as one single ummah again. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day. I bid to the audience. My name is Muhammad Syafiq Alauddin. I'm from Faculty of Dentistry, University Sains Islam Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and together with my colleague Ahmad Shukran Baharuddin from Faculty of Syariah and Law, University Sains Islam Malaysia, and also Muhammad Ifwat Ghazali from Faculty of Science and Technology, we would like to present our review paper entitled Digitalization in Dentistry, the Modern Approach in Oral Healthcare Transformation. So dentistry is a part of medical or medicine branch that have been remained affected by the development of modern digital transformation. So the utilization of digitalization in dentistry are useful in modern day treatment, especially when we are facing with numerous challenges involving multiple chronic oral diseases, aging populations, complex treatment needs by the community, and continuous rising costs over the lifespan. In dentistry, the most common oral diseases, we can divide it into two, which is a caries or tooth decay and also gum disease, or we call it periodontal disease. We have also other diseases such as oral cancer and also trauma. The current challenges in a worldwide scope, we're having an aging population. According to the National Institute of Health by US Department of Health and Society, we are heading towards more than 20 billion of people at the age of 65 and above by 2050. So there's a plenty of people which is aging at that time. We have also a problem with awareness and also conscious by the community and also by the people to get dental treatment. There's also a stigma that dental treatment are not as much as important as medical treatment, and there's also issue with the rising cost of the treatment. Also, we have a patients and also clients that located at a remote or distance location, make it quite difficult for them to visit and meeting the doctors and dentists at a regular interval. And also we have a rising issue of the patient with diabetes, with hypertension, with a chronic medical illness, and also the patient with habit which is bad for them and are related to the dentistry, which are, for example, smoking and also eating sugary foods. So the implementation of the digital computer-derived application facilitated by the superfast broadband and internet by smartphones, tablets, personal computer, and smartwatch are being explored by relevant industry and healthcare provider, yet to provide a comprehensive yet simplified advanced management in dentistry. And we are focusing at the patient-centered management. I started off with augmented and virtual reality. Augmented reality were defined as interactive development of technology utilizing additional composite animated information in the user's real world, while virtual reality, on the other hand, is the total immersion of users in composite virtual environment in which the user's feelings, sense, and reaction are virtually simulated by the computer, thus creating an artificial interaction. There were plethora of applications and software exponentially supported by this technique to enhance the ability and capacity of dental practitioners and specialists to support total patient care system. So the virtual planning, especially in the implant dentistry, we have a data acquisition stages, data processing stages, and also manufacturing stages, which are all supported by the digital system. The data acquisition we take from a modern cone beam computed tomography, which is modern radiographic and routinely utilized in dentistry. And also we have an intraoral scanner in which, like the picture shows us, where we have a dental practitioner taking a digital image of the patient mouth. And also sometimes we need to do the conventional impression as well. And then we process the data in the computer-aided virtual simulation. In these cases, we put the case on the computer software and we can see that there's plenty of color here indicating the bone and also the soft tissue as well. And we can plan the surgical planning initially and predominantly before we have the surgery itself. This is also another case where we did a virtual design before and after, and we can see from the left picture is the image, digital image showing patient come with a multiple rotation of the teeth and patient request to make the teeth slightly more aligned and better in terms of arrangement. And we did virtual design, and we have a couple of image superimposed at the teeth that are rotated to see what kind of dentition the patient will have in the future. In modern manufacturing process in dentistry, we have a 3D printers which is utilizing additive manufacturing method, and we can use it to produce dentures, crown and bridges, and surgical guide for implant treatment. And we have also a modern milling machine that can produce an enormous, very well good and functioning prosthesis. This is a day in dental office, the example of the cases that utilizing the modern concept in dentistry. We see the patient missing a couple of teeth, and then we constructed a surgical template based on additive manufacturing by 3D printers to make sure the placement of dental implants directly at the proposed site, and we can see the arrangement of the dental implants are according to the plan. This is after the healing. We can see a beautiful soft tissue relation and also beautiful implant place located and healing well. And we constructed the prosthesis during the modern milling method, subtractive method, and finally we have the patient with the teeth, artificial teeth, yet feels like the original teeth. We look at the aspect of augmented reality and virtual reality in dental education. This technique allows a receptive feedback environment, interactive teaching, And the system will inadvertently improve simulated prospective preclinical training, hand-and-eye coordination of the students, the ergonomics, the position of the dental practitioner without the risk of harming the real-life patient. This system also allows the dental student to reflect and learn by themselves, thus decreasing the faculty workload if compared to traditional preclinical simulation training. In this picture here, it shows the traditional laboratory training by the preclinical student. We have a full classroom that have a lot of students, but now with the AR and VR in dental education, the student will sit in front of the machine and they will have everything, uh, every exercise desired by them in front of them, and they can pick and choose, and also can be assessed by the supervisor as well. Another important aspect is the teledentistry with remote consultation. The current challenge in the current era is the rapid increase of dental treatment costs, the steady incline of the aging population, the chronic oral diseases, and also necessity for dental treatment, especially patients from remote area and difficult geographical location. With the teledentistry, it can help to facilitate and set a pathway to the patient to reduce the number and timing of dental office visit while empowering the oral health self-care at home. The remote clinical consultation is a platform that enables sharing of the patient's data between primary and secondary care to allow fully integrated total patient management and enable the simultaneous discussion and decision between patient, dentist, and also specialists, thus enabling a full concept of comprehensive oral health care. Especially during the pandemic era of COVID-19, this system will prevent the unnecessary traveling and allow the review or consultation be done at home, communal facilities, or primary care settings. Additive manufacturing is another subject, and it is basically a rapid production process of any three-dimensional objects using 3D printers, allow a complex geometrical design to be produced with additional benefits without the reduction of unnecessary raw material wastage, mass production of the items, and fast production. We can see here the additive manufacturing is quite important in dentistry, in which we produce a lot of uh, appliance by using additive method. Artificial intelligence is another aspect that encapsulates the ability of the machine to perform human tasks. It will eliminate human intervention such as potential human error, emotion, and bias, thus making the perfect solution for laborious work with increased risk of error. In dentistry, we can see that it is the aspect that being focused in radiology, which we focus on the automated landmark in lateral cephalometric view and also panoramic radiography, detection of caries by intraoral scanner, manufacturing process, which we allow precise construction of dental prostheses and clear aligner, in which they have an algorithm in which it can predict and decide the future tooth movement and necessary pressure to be applied to the teeth with the aid and input from the dental practitioner. This is the AI in dentistry. All are being simplified into a nice single pictures. So the conclusion, the delivery of modern oral healthcare should be derived based on a modern technology with the main patient-centered outcome. The pandemic of COVID-19 showed that teledentistry with remote consultation and artificial intelligence has a major role to play, and the digitalization in dentistry will facilitate the oral healthcare to the optimum level. This is some reference.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to the panel of the forum. Okay, today I will present my presentation, which is my article that I write with the title of A Critical Analysis of Enabler Function in Malaysia Halal Meat Industry. Okay, my name is Dr. Zaharah and currently I am attached in Asmady International Business School, or known as AHIP at UTM University Technology Maras Kudai Johor. Okay, let us start with the slide content. Okay. So this is the content of the presentation. First, I'll start with the introduction, literature review, research method, discussion, and lastly is the conclusion of the articles. Okay, first is the introduction about the halal food. So as we know, currently we need to eat halal food because we are Muslims. So what actually the meaning of halal food? Halal food means a food which is permissible and lawful for the daily Muslim consumption. And we also have heard a term called as halal food supply chain. Okay, what's actually halal food supply chain? Is the continuation of the food from the manufacturers to the retailer, in a chain. So halal food supply chain must be comply with the requirement from the government agencies, as they already created a legislative and also the act which the stakeholder need to follow. So the aim of the study is to analyze the function of the enablers. Enablers means the policy executor, and to clarify the issues of enforcement integration among the stakeholders and the policies makers. Okay, so in this article, I had came out with literature review as to show the problem statement of this study. First, it already stated by an author that there should be a strong link between the policy executor, which is the government agency, with the stakeholder in the halal meat industry. And also the stakeholder must be a person which is knowledgeable in the Sharia requirement, in also in the aspect of food and quality of the halal meat. And also
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، وعلى سيدنا ونبينا ومرشدنا وقرة أعيننا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أولا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته إلى كل الزملاء الطلاب في جامعة العلوم الإسلامية والعلماء الأجلاء في جامعة العلوم الإسلامية الماليزية، وبالأخص كلية الشريعة والقانون FSU. تحية صباحية من خلال هذا المنبر الإعلامي. أود أن أسرد لكم الآن وأشرح لكم البحث المتواضع الذي هو أمامكم لغرض المشاركة في المؤتمر العالمي في الشريعة والقانون الذي سوف ينعقد في الفترة القريبة القادمة من يومين 27 و 28 أكتوبر من هذا الشهر إن شاء الله. عنوان المؤتمر الحقيقة القانون الدولي الإنساني والتحديات والنزاعات المعاصرة، من إعدادي أنا كطالب باحث دكتوراه في مجال الشريعة والقانون، تحت إشراف كل من الدكتور محمد علي محمود إدريس والدكتور أحمد شكران بحر الدين من كلية الشريعة والقانون. فيما يتعلق هنا البحث ينقسم إلى عدة محاور، من الملخص إلى مشكلة البحث، إلى أهداف البحث، إلى أسئلة البحث، إلى أهمية البحث، إلى المحاور، إلى الخاتمة، إلى النتائج والتوصيات. القانون الدولي الإنساني هو القانون الذي يصون كرامة طبعا حقيقة الإنسانية في أثناء النزاعات المسلحة سواء كانت داخلية أو خارجية، وأن نشأته في السابق نشأ هذا القانون الدولي الإنساني كان في القرن ال18 من القرون الصارمة الحقيقة، حيث أن الشريعة الإسلامية عرفت هذا القانون من خلال وصية أبو بكر الصديق رضي الله عنه وأرضاه بما وصفه القانون بما يحتويه من مواد ونصوص بأنها تحمل في مضامينها قيمة إنسانية مشتركة بين مختلف الحضارات الإنسانية التي تحمي كرامة وتصون كرامة الإنسانية وتصونها، حيث تهدف الحقيقة هذه الدراسة إلى أن منظومة القانون الدولي الإنساني تعيش أزمة وجود بقدر ما تعيش أزمة مواكبة وتطور وغير ذلك. وهناك العديد من التحديات المعاصرة في هذا الوقت العصيب التي تتنوع أشكال الحروب ووسائل القتال والأسلحة المستعملة، وإضافة إلى أن هذه التحديات تعكس حجم التغيرات في بنية وثقافة ونوعية النزاعات التي هي موجودة الآن في كل أنحاء العالم، حيث تضم هذه القضايا الحقيقة والتحديات المعاصرة المؤثرة على حقوق الإنسان والقانون الدولي الإنساني وأرواح الناس وأرواح المواطنين وأرواح السكان وأرواح المجتمع، منها الشركات الأمنية الخاصة التي تعمل الآن من أجل الربح المادي في كل أنحاء العالم. شاهدناها فيما سبق في أفغانستان وفي باكستان وفي العراق وفي بعض الدول العربية الأخرى وفي بعض الدول الأوروبية وآسيوية وغير ذلك، وفي فيتنام فيما سبق، وفي أفريقيا في رواندا وفي يوغوسلافيا وفي كل أنحاء العالم التي يزدون بالمرتزقة للقتال في أبناء سكان هذه الأرض الأصليين في كل أنحاء العالم. إن أبرز هذه المظاهر طبعا ذلك الحروب السبرانية. هناك حروب أخرى، حروب بيولوجية وكيميائية، وتعرف أيضا باسم الفيروسات وغيرها من الحروب الجرثومية الميكروبية. هي الاستخدام المتعمد للجراثيم الحقيقة ككوفيد 19 الآن الكورونا، ما يسمى بالكورونا الذي منتشر في كل أنحاء العالم. الحقيقة هو الأوبئة والأمراض والفيروسات هي من عند الله سبحانه وتعالى، ولكن الإنسان أيضا مشارك ومساهم في صنع الجراثيم والفيروسات ونشرها في كل أنحاء العالم من أجل الساسة ومن أجل السياسة ومن أجل الاقتصاد ومن أجل الأرباح ومن أجل الشركات الرأسمالية الكبرى، شركات الأدوية وغيرها، في سبيل تطوير، في سبيل بيع منتجاتها وتسويقها على أنها فيروسات وكذا. ولكن الفيروسات أيضا نكرر أنها من صنع الله سبحانه وتعالى، ولكن الإنسان والبشر له يد أيضا في صنع تلك، أيضا في صناعة الحروب الآن في ساحات القتال الآن موجودة الآن. فقد أفسح الفضاء الإلكتروني مجالات عديدة في الحروب الآن، الإعلام وغيرها من القنوات الإعلامية الفضائية الموجودة الآن وغيرها من شبكات التواصل السوشيال ميديا وغير ذلك، حيث ازداد استخدام أطراف النزاعات المسلحة لمنظومات الأسلحة التي يتحكم بها من صناعة الطيارات بدون طيار، ويزداد استخدام منظومات الأسلحة الأوتوماتيكية، وتجري دراسة أنظمة ذاتية أخرى مثل الريبوت في المستقبل القادم لإدخاله في ساحات الحرب في المستقبل. الحقيقة هذا الأبستراكت الآن موجود أمامكم، هذا باختصار شديد. فيما يتعلق بالمقدمة، عرف العالم مختلف أزمة تطاحنات الحقيقة بين البشر وبين العديد من الدول، والحقيقة بيشهد تحديات برزت مؤخرا في القانون الدولي الإنساني، حيث واجه القانون الدولي الإنساني العديد من التحديات مستمرة في النزاعات المسلحة المعاصرة، منها أودت بالعقود الأخيرة إلى حياة العديد من المدنيين الذين هم راحوا ضحايا انتهاكات الجسيمة للقانون الدولي الإنساني وقانون حقوق الإنسان. الكثير من النزاعات في ظل ظروف معينة يمكن تشكيل تلك انتهاكات إبادات جماعية وحروب، جرائم حرب وجرائم أهلية وجرائم كذا. والحقيقة الضحايا كلها المدنيين. ستظل أولوية الدائم بالنسبة للجنة الدولية هي ضمان القدرة، اللجنة الدولية للصليب الأحمر، اللجنة الدولية للهلال الأحمر، اللجنة الدولية للمنظمات المجتمع المدني الدولية التي تعمل في مجال حقوق الإنسان وقانون الدولي الإنساني، ضمان قدرة القانون الدولي الإنساني معالجة وقائع الحرب. حقيقة هناك معاناة الإنسان أثناء الحروب تزداد مدتها حقيقة في الهجوم المتعمد على المدنيين والهجمات العشوائية غير مميزة وتدمير البنية التحتية الضرورية للسكان، حيث أصبحت الدمة الأساسية للحروب المعاصرة، وذلك أصبحت تواجه مجموعة دولية تحديات صعبة من أجل تطبيق القانون الدولي الإنساني والعمل على ضمان حماية أفضل المدنيين. مشكلة البحث يختصر البحث في دراسة موضوع القانون الدولي الإنساني وتحديات النزاعات المعاصرة في الحروب، حيث يواجه القانون الدولي الإنساني تحديات مستمرة جراء تطور النزاعات المسلحة المعاصرة. تتمحور مشكلة البحث حول أبرز التحديات التي برزت مؤخرا أمام القانون الدولي الإنساني وأمام حقوق الإنسان من نزاعات مسلحة بين المنظمات المسلحة الإرهابية، المنظمات المسلحة والمنظمات الإرهابية في العالم. يواجه أيضا القانون الدولي الإنساني وتقول تحديات مستمرة ومعاصرة جراء تطور النزاعات المسلحة المعاصرة، يعتمد على تحقيق حماية أكبر للمدنيين. المفترض أن القانون الدولي الإنساني حماية المدنيين من الانتهاكات وكل الحروب التي تحدث هنا وهناك مطروحة أمام المجتمع الدولي، أمام اللجنة الدولية، وضمان قدرة معالجة وقائع الحرب. أسئلة البحث هناك عدة أسئلة تتمحور في 3 أسئلة: هل القانون الدولي الإنساني قانون بالمعنى الدقيق لكلمة قانون؟ وما هو مصدر ظهور هذا القانون الشأتي؟ وما هي آليات وضمانات تنفيذ هذا على المستوى الدولي والوطني؟ هل يتفق القانون الدولي الإنساني مع الفقه الإسلامي في قضايا النزاعات المعاصرة الدولية؟ هذه بالنسبة للأسئلة المطروحة أمامكم الآن باختصار. أيضا أهداف البحث يهدف للتطور ما فيه بالقانون الدولي الإنساني، بيان آليات القانون الدولي الإنساني على صعيدي الدولي والوطني. يجب أن يتفق القانون الدولي الإنساني مع الفقه الإسلامي والشريعة الإسلامية الغراء، ضرورة استيفاء المعايير الخاصة بوضع الطالبي الأمان والحق اللجوء ما يتبع ذلك من حقوق وواجبات حماية دولية. أهمية البحث: يعتبر موضوع القانون الدولي الإنساني وتحديات المعاصرة من أهم الموضوعات المطروحة في هذا العصر، حيث يشترك القانون الدولي الإنساني مع القانون الدولي لحقوق الإنسان في هدف واحد، هو المحافظة على الكرامة الإنسانية ويتنادى هذا الموضوع بدراسة البحث، وذلك لما له أهمية في أطراف النزاعات المسلحة والصراعات الموجودة الآن فيما يتعلق بحقوق الإنسان والأشخاص. هذه تمركز البحث الجانب النظري والعملي. في من الناحية النظرية هو أبرز القوانين التي لها علاقة بالموضوع القانون الدولي الإنساني والقانون الدولي لحقوق الإنسان، حيث المكتب العلمية وحيث لها من أهم تحليل القوانين لإرشاد السلطات والجهات الحكومية والحكومات الأخرى بشأن تطبيق القانون الدولي الإنساني والقانون حقوق الإنسان لغرض حماية الأشخاص بجانب تسليط الضوء على منهج الشريعة الإسلامية. أيضا فيما يتعلق بالقوانين هناك مفهوم الدولي الإنساني الآن القانون الدولي الإنساني مجموعة القواعد القانونية الآمرة التي أقرها المجتمع الدولي بذات الطابع الإنساني والتي تعتبر جزء من القانون الدولي العام، وهو مجموعة القواعد القانونية المكتوبة والعرفية. وذلك بالنسبة للجنة الدولية الصليب الأحمر بوصفها الراعي القانون الدولي الإنساني، تشير إلى القانون الدولي ينظم العلاقات بين الدول والمنظمات الدولية وغيرها من رعاية القانون الدولي، وهو فرع من القانون الدولي العام الذي يتكون من قواعد تسعى إلى أوقات النزاع المسلح. هناك عدة محاور. مع المبحث الأول آلية تطبيق القانون، الآليات الرئيسية تطبيق القانون الدولي الإنساني. المبحث الأول مباحث والمطالب التي موضوعها أمامكم الآن فيما يتعلق بآلية تطبيق القانون الدولي الإنساني على الصعيد الدولي الوطني، دور القضاء الدولي الجنائي، دور المحاكم الجنائية الدولية في تطبيق القانون الدولي الإنساني، آلية تطبيق القانون الدولي على الصعيد الوطني والداخلي والمحلي. أيضا الالتزامات التي تطلب تطبيق القانون الدولي الإنساني في القانون الداخلي، الالتزام بإصدار التشريعات الضرورية الحقيقة لتنفيذ القانون الدولي الإنساني، منح القضاء الوطني اختصاص ذلك بمعاقبة انتهاكات القانون الدولي الإنساني. الخاتمة أن القانون الدولي الإنساني وقانون حقوق الإنسان هما فرعان مختلفان متميزان من فروع القانون الدولي المعاصر. يعني الأول يتوفر فيه الحماية للنزاعات المسلحة الدولية والمشاركة في الأعمال الحربية مما ألقى أسلحة وغير ذلك. يجب إدراج مبادئ القانون الدولي الإنساني ضمن المنظومة التعليمية المدنية والعسكرية، إنشاء أجيال متشبعة بثقافة السلم ونبذ العنف وتم فكرة الحرب والعدوان كما يجب أن ننوه من قواعد القانون الدولي الإنساني مختلف مناطق العالم. أما لا شك تتجه الجهود الدولية وتتوحد بين نحو العمل هذه النتائج. القانون الدولي الإنساني هو قانون يتعلق بالنزاعات المسلحة الدولية، الدول أطراف اتفاقية جنيف 49 900 بروتوكولها 77. إن مخالفات انتهاكات القانون الدولي أصبحت تشكل جرائم دولية تخضع لاختصاص المحكمة الجنائية الدولية التي يمكن المحاكمة للمنظمة الدولية الحكومية. هذه عدة النتائج الحقيقة الموجودة أمامكم الآن. التوصيات تخفيف من آثار الحرب، وضع نظام وقواعد تحكم هذه الفترة من أجل الحد والردع من الانتهاكات ومعاناة الفئات، بذل جهد كبير من أجل المنظمات الدولية المجتمع الدولي والمنظمات الغير الحكومية، قرار اتفاقيات تحكم هذه النزاعات والانتهاكات التي تحدث هنا وهناك، تجنب المزيد من الآثار السلبية للحروب، ولا يأتي ذلك إلا بتطبيق مبادئ وأحكام القانون الدولي الإنساني وجعله قواعد السلوك ينبغي. يجب أن تتضافر الجهود الدولية كذا المحكمة الجنائية الدولية للتصويب بمسارها، اقتراح إدراج مادة القانون الدولي الإنساني مناهج الكليات العسكرية والأمنية والجامعات لكي يتحقق أكبر قدر الانتشار الواسع للقواعد ومبادئ القانون الدولي الإنساني. جميع السلطات الشرعية والدولية العربية الاستفسار بسن التشريعات التي تجرم وتعاقب انتهاكات القانون الدولي الإنساني حتى تستقيم مع الالتزامات الدولية وتتجنب الوقوع تحت طائرة المسؤولية الدولية الجنائية، وهذا ما يستقيم به مع الشريعة الإسلامية الغراء زمن صحيح وقبل اتفاقيات جنيف والاتفاقيات الموجودة في العالم الآن. هذا كل ما موجود في بحثنا المتواضع الآن أمامكم، وبارك الله فيكم على حسن الإنصات والاستماع، وشكرا جزيلا، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Ridwan bin Talib. I'm a master's student from the Faculty of Syariah and Undang-Undang FSU, University Science Islam Malaysia USIM. Today, I'll be presenting a brief video on my paper titled The Evolution of Diplomatic Relations Between Malaysia and North Korea. Before I start, I would like to apologize for not being able to prepare the video on the prescribed format of PowerPoint because I was having some problems with my PowerPoint applications. Anyhow, let us start. As an introduction, the diplomatic relations between Malaysia and North Korea started off apprehensively, and this was because North Korea at that time was supporting communism movement in the Southeast Asian region by espousing Indonesia's konfrontasi against Malaysia in 1963. Malaysia, under the premiership of Tunku Abdul Rahman Putra Al-Haj, had a fixed foreign policy that was against communism and pro-capitalism. This stand on foreign policy, however, changed when Tun Abdul Razak became Malaysia's second Prime Minister in 1970. Malaysia changed its foreign policy from pro-capitalism and anti-communism towards neutrality and non-alignment, and this was later shown by Malaysia's participation in the Non-Aligned Movement, or NAM, in 1970 and the founding of the Zone of Peace, Freedom and Neutrality, or ZOPFAN, in 1971. The highlight of Malaysia's stand in neutrality and non-alignment was Tun Abdul Razak's diplomatic visit to the Communist State of China in 1974. North Korea, on the other hand, aspired to become a powerful socialist communist country. And in order to achieve this, North Korea, under the leadership of its first supreme leader, Kim Il sung, had launched a state ideology known as Chuche in 1955. Basically, Chuche is a state ideology that emphasizes on the notion of becoming completely independent and self-reliant, especially in the areas of economy, politics, and national security. Also, in order to achieve that aim, North Korea had launched a nationwide nuclear weapons development program since 1950s. However, after realizing that North Korea is being isolated from the rest of the world and following the gradual collapse of Soviet Union in 1991, North Korea decided to expand a scope of diplomatic relations beyond the communist bloc. Therefore, in 1973, North Korea had formed a formal diplomatic relations with Malaysia. Interestingly, the initial stages of the diplomatic relations between both countries were initiated through sports diplomacy in the form of friendly ping pong tournament held in Malaysia in 1971. And afterwards, both countries have collaborated in several strategic collaborations, such as in the areas of agriculture and heavy industry. However, in 2017, Kim Jong-nam, the estranged half-brother of North Korea's current Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, was murdered in KLIA. Two female attackers were apprehended and tried by the courts. However, due to the lack of substantial evidence, both of them could not be held responsible for the murder. The murder was believed to be masterminded by the North Korean regime because the murder weapon in this case, i.e., VX nerve agent, was a byproduct of weapons of mass destruction. It is a nuclear weapon or biological weapon which North Korea has the capacity to produce. Evidently, the murder of Kim Jong-nam in Malaysia had ruptured and damaged the diplomatic relations between Malaysia and North Korea. So my paper proposes an alternative of addressing and resolving the diplomatic disputes between Malaysia and North Korea beyond the conventional legal framework. I am referring to the method known as tracks of diplomacy. So tracks of diplomacy basically refers to the method or methodologies explored and exploited by the players in international relations. There are several variants or types of tracks of diplomacy, such as track 1 diplomacy, which is official diplomacy, track 2 diplomacy, which is the unofficial diplomacy, and track 1.5 diplomacy, which is a hybrid diplomacy, that is basically the combination of track 1 and track 2 diplomacy. I believe that, and I contend that the suspended diplomatic relations between Malaysia and North Korea could be addressed and could be resolved by exploring and by exploiting these various kinds or methods of tracks of diplomacy. And as a conclusion, I believe that Malaysia, as a peaceful country, should pursue diplomatic relations with North Korea. And in general, Malaysia, as a friendly country, should be friendly to all nations, regardless of the differences in their ideologies. Although it is undoubted that both countries have differences in ideologies, it is undoubtable that both countries have actually several shared aspirations. For example, both North Korea and Malaysia aspired to create and sustain a peaceful, neutral, and non-aligned region that supports peaceful coexistence. And as such, both countries have to find ways to make their diplomatic relations sustainable. And I believe one of the best way to resolve this dispute between Malaysia and North Korea and to later rejuvenate the diplomatic relations between both countries is to explore methods beyond the conventional legal framework. So as a conclusion, Malaysia should sustain and should continue harmonious diplomatic relations with North Korea. So I believe that will conclude my brief presentation. I hope I have managed to raise some interesting points and managed to pique your interest. And I hope that I will be seeing you in the upcoming conference. Until then, see you. Assalamualaikum.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Thank you to all Committee International Seminar on Sharia and Law ISLA 2020 for conducting this program. Today I would like to present to all of you about my research article entitled The Admissibility of Digital Document According to Sharia Islamic Law, a Preliminary Analysis. The author of this paper, which are Professor Media Dr. Wan Abdul Fattah bin Wa Ismail, Dr. Ahmad Shukran bin Baharuddin, Professor Media Dr. Luqman bin Abdul Muttalib, and the last one is Mohamad and Aiman bin Alias. And inshallah today I will be the presenter. We move to the next slide. This is the content that I will present to all of you. First of all, what is the concept of document as evidence? The figures show the definition of document under Section 3, Evidence Act 1915 and Sharia Court Evidence Federal Territories Act 1997. Define document as the letters, figures, marks, symbols, signals, sign, or other form of expression, description, or representation whatsoever. The second one is any visual recording, whether of still or moving image. And the third one is any sound recording or any electronic magnetic, mechanical or other recording whatsoever and howsoever made, or any sound, electronic impulses or other data whatsoever. And the third one is a recording or transmission over a distance of any matters by any or any combination of the mean mentioned in paragraph A, B or C. And the last one is or by more than one of the mean mentioned in paragraph A, B, C and D intended to be used or which may be used to express, describe or howsoever representing that matters. From the definition, there are several basic types of document that can be used as evidence in court according to this section, which are digital document, document, for example report, letter, forensic science element, for example is DNA, expert report, medical report and so on, and the last one is signature. And today I will focus on the admissibility of use digital document in court, inshallah. According to the Muhammad Ismail 2006, the digital document can be defined as a form of property information stored, recorded, or channeled in electronic form, and the material can be presented in court as evidence supporting or denying the allegation. There are several classifications of digital document according to Ismail 2006, which are very large scale integration VLCI, hard disk, software design description SDD, digital camera, cell phone, scanners, SDD card, support band, photocopies, printers, computer, compact disc CD, digital video disc DVD, internet networks, video compact disc VCD, software, and last one is common gateway interface CGI. Move to the next one, the Islamic legal perspective on digital documents as a mean of proof. From the Holy Quran, believers, whenever you contract a debt from one another for a known term, commit it to right. In this verses, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala stress us for making a written text because it is possible to present a written document as evidence in a court proceeding. Second one is for the hadith. It is the duty of a Muslim who has something which is to be given as a bequest not to have it for tonight without having his will written down regarding it. Hadith Sahih Muslim. From this hadith, the Prophet advised us to write a will. The third one is from the Islamic legal magazine, Al-Kitabah Al-Khitab, which means Kitabah is equal to document. This method indirectly means that each text or document is acceptable as conversation. And the last one is Sharia Court Evidence Federal Territories Act 1997, Section 3, Section 49, and Section 33. The next one is the admissibility of the digital document as evident in Sharia Court. Section 3 of the Sharia Court Federal Territories Evidence Act 1997, Act 561, has shown that digital document can be reclassified as document. Based on the finding of the study, the principle of Sharia recognized the document as a mean of proof in the Sharia Court. This is because the description derived from the documentary evidence helps to support the other fact presented in court. This can be seen in the case Azida Fazlina vs. Shamsuddin Latif and Ahmad Fauzi bin Mansour against Nur Hafizah binti Ahmad. In the case of Azida Fazlina against Shamsuddin Latif, the court upheld and convicted the divorced spouse through a short message system (SMS) when the husband sent an SMS text for a divorce. It indicates that digital information such as SMS also fall in the Sharia court because it helps to confirm that a divorce has taken place between the husband and wife. For the case Ahmad Fauzi bin Mansour against Hafizah binti Ahmad, in this case the plaintiff claims that the defendant because of cheat by attaching a telephone bill, indicating that the defendant always contact with other men. The Sharia court accepted Nushu's claim based on the evidence of behavior presented in document description such as phone bill and SMS, and this show that the document description such as phone bill and SMS are considered to be a digital form of evidence and are used in the Sharia court. According to the Section 33 Sharia Court Evidence Federal Territories Act 1997 at 561, the digital evidence should also be supported by other evidence such as expert opinion. It is because it is meant to verify the authenticity of the digital document from the expert. For example, in the case Ajmawati binti Atan against Moriazi bin Mohamad, they in this case use the expert testimony to test the credibility of the document that have been issued. The use of a digital document as evidence is permitted in Islamic Sharia law. Section 3 and Section 49 of the Sharia Court Evidence Federal Territories Act 1997 at 561 provide that electronic documents are accepted as evidence. The results show that there is a very high need to accept digital documents as evidence, especially in the Sharia court. As such, development in science and technology have led to the need to make use of it. Studies show that the use of the digital document as evidence serves to reinforce the other evidence presented in court. Accordingly, the evidence provided by this digital document is admissible in the Sharia court after it has been strengthened by the expert in digital forensic. We call it as Ar-Ra'yu al-Kabir to test the credibility of the document issue. However, the discussion on the use of the digital document as evidence needs to be further extended in the context of the implementation of the SOP in the Sharia Code. That's all for me. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.
My paper, the title is Constitutional Court of Republic Indonesia, Safeguarding Citizen Constitutional Right in the Middle of the Pandemic. My name is Hani Adhani. I am PhD candidate from IUM, ICOL, and I also work at Constitutional Court of Republic Indonesia as Substitute Registrar. So first, I would like to introduce the Indonesian profile. The state of Republic of Indonesia. We have a population 260 million. Our island is 70,000. Our capital city is Jakarta. We have also a common city just like Bali, Lombok, Bandung, Yogyakarta, and Surabaya. Our currency is rupiah. Number of ethnic is 1,340 ethnic. Our state motto is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, and our independence is 17 Augustus 1945. So here's Indonesian map. Total area is 1,905 million kilometers from Aceh to Papua. Describe how the Amendment Indonesian Constitution. So it started in 1999 when the Congress member finally make some amendment of the Indonesian Constitution. In that time, the Congress is a new member of Congress because start in 1998. There's some demonstration in Indonesia, and we face some any kind of collapse in economy. So it makes the effect of the President Suharto finally resigned from his office, and Habibie agenda as the Vice President is to prepare the election. So finally we have a new constitution, amendment constitution. It start from 1999 until 2002. So this institution of Indonesia according to 1945. In the judiciary power, we have Constitutional Court of Republic Indonesia and Judicial Commission, and also we have Congress and Senate. So this is the adjudicate of the Indonesian Constitutional Court. It is already mentioned in Article 25C in Indonesian Constitution. The first adjudication is review the law against the Constitution, and then determining disputes over the authority of state institution whose power are given by the Constitution, deciding upon dissolution of political party, deciding dispute of the ratio of general election, and then impeachment president. So this is the name of the Indonesian Constitutional Court, the guardian of Constitution, the final interpreter of the Constitution, the guardian of democracy, the protector of citizen constitutional rights, and the protector of human. So to handle the COVID-19 case in Indonesia, Joko Widodo declared that Indonesia already has status of public health emergency. President Joko Widodo make a president decree and also make any kind of law and regulation. The Minister of Health and local government also made various regulation to the aim that community join the fight or at least to avoid contracting the coronavirus. So because there's a lot of regulation in Asia, is make issue legal certainty during the health emergency, and its potential to violate violate the constitutional right of citizens as stipulated in the 1945 Constitution. So, how if the regulation were not in line with the constitutional right of citizens as stipulated in the Constitution? So, the answer is we can make any kind of request or review to the Constitutional Court of Indonesia if we want to review any kind of act of law, or we can request for judicial review to the Supreme Court if the regulation is under the law. And it is online. You see, this is the website of Indonesian Constitutional Court, and this is the website of Mahkamah Agung or Supreme Court. So, how the challenges of the Constitutional Court during the pandemic era? So, since the pandemic start, that has kept in March, there have been then 70 applications for judicial review received by the Constitutional Court. The application for judicial review is made online through the simple application, and the trial is conducted online by video conference application, so that people do not need to come to the Constitutional Court to avoid the spread of coronavirus. Also, the Constitutional Court provide legal to provide legal certainty amid the corona pandemic. Continue to strive to speed up the process of case examination so that it changes the average time for completing cases of judicial review to be faster. For example, from January to August, the Constitutional Court has decided more than 60 cases of judicial review. In addition, the Constitutional Court has also implemented online case administration and general administration management using digital technology facility so that Constitutional Court employees can work at home during this pandemic. Only 25% of the employees is work at office. So the conclusion is, amid the coronavirus pandemic, the court must be able to adjust to keep up with the technology development. Access to court amid the coronavirus pandemic is become a rule of the game to maintain the constitutional right. The Indonesian Constitutional Court has succeeded creating digital court that can be accessed by all Indonesians only by using a smartphone that they have and without money or no cost to litigate. The existence of serious effort made by the Indonesian Constitutional Court amid the coronavirus pandemic by creating a digital court system to provide easy access for the community or for the people to carry out various constitutional issues is something brilliant. So it's create a court that is not only friendly for the people but also fair, transparent, accountable, so that his will automatically increase public trust in the judiciary. Thank you very much. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The title of my presentation is The New Norms for Household Solid Waste Management in Time of COVID-19 Malaysian Legal Perspective. Waste are generated through human activity and can be classified as solid, liquid and gases. Clinical waste is a type of solid waste which is classified as scheduled waste under the Environmental Quality Scheduled Waste Regulations 2005. Comprehensive guidance on proper handling and disposal of clinical waste generated by hospitals and other health facilities is provided under the Clinical Waste Management Guidelines. Under Section 2 of the Solid Waste and Public Cleansing Management Act 2007, household solid waste is defined as any solid waste generated by a household and of a kind that is ordinarily generated or produced by any premises when occupied as a dwelling house. Household hazardous solid waste is generally classified as partial solid waste, which is defined as any kind of controlled solid waste as may be prescribed, which is or may be dangerous to public health or is difficult to treat, keep or dispose of. The issue of waste management during the pandemic of COVID-19 has become of great importance because according to the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies in 2020, COVID-19 poses new challenges in waste management due to several issues. The issues include inadequate management of healthcare waste and household solid waste, which may have severe implications for public health and the environment, increased mixed household solid waste volume, including infectious waste, as a consequence of low levels of source separation, increased volume of waste from plastic due to lockdowns and suspension of the reusable items in markets, and infectious waste mixing, which may cause exposure to virus transmission. In Malaysia, it is highlighted that a great number of masks are not sufficiently disposed of by the public. Some clinical waste such as personal protective equipment or PPE and face masks have ended up in the landfills of solid waste. The pandemic of COVID-19 has caused the emergence of new norms in many aspects of life. According to the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies 2020, any COVID-19 waste will be managed and treated as hazardous waste. The households may generate household hazardous solid waste such as contaminated face masks or other household solid waste during the pandemic, which must be properly disposed of. In Malaysia, wearing face masks in crowded public places and on public transport was mandatory from 1st August 2020 onwards. Therefore, there is the emergence of a new type of plastic pollution which includes used face masks. As a conclusion, there is an increased generation of household solid waste during the pandemic. Nevertheless, the enforcement of the Movement Control Order has a positive impact in terms of enhancing the practice of 3R among the society, which is supported by the practice of separation of waste at source. Another significant observation is that there are new norms in managing household solid waste by the relevant authorities with the issuance of the standard operating procedures by the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. There is also an issue with regard to the handling of household hazardous solid waste or special solid waste in Malaysia. Therefore, it is recommended that households should be provided with a comprehensive guideline on household solid waste management during the pandemic. There should also be proper coordination among the relevant authorities in handling household hazardous solid waste. As a conclusion, the proper management of solid waste generated by household in the time of COVID-19 is vital, since the consequences of this may be dire, particularly for the public and waste collectors. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. Today I'm going to discuss the topic of right of cancellation for booking of short-term accommodation through digital economy platform before movement control order. This article has been prepared by Madam Farhani binti Abuamied together with Madam Mahira binti Mahta and was supervised by Professor Dr. Zaharah Arif binti Abdul Qadas, and three of us are from UNISA. As an introduction, due to the rapid increase in the number of positive cases of COVID-19 in Malaysia, the government of Malaysia has announced movement control order on 16 March to restrict and control the movement of its people in order to curb the spread of the virus. Consequently, most of the governmental operations and businesses temporarily ceased their operation with the exception of those categorized under essential services. This MCO has severely affected the economy of the country, including tourism industry, which recorded a loss of approximately 45 billion in the first half of year 2020. Tourism industry comprises of few segmentations, and it includes accommodation in accommodation segments such as hotels and alternative accommodation alike. COVID-19 has significantly contributed to the losses due to cancellation of bookings and inability to operate due to the MCO. The digital platform which most hotel operators and homestay owners depend upon in advertising their assets were also massively hit by the pandemic. Notwithstanding the negative effect of MCO to hotels and homestay owners, the customers have also reported losses due to the unexpected travel restrictions. As many accommodation bookings were done via digital platforms, customers had no choice but to abide by the terms and conditions in the contract put forward by the digital platform companies, especially with regard to refund of payments due to no-show. There is a big debate on whether inability of performance of contract due to MCO is regarded as a violation or force majeure, which would either terminate the contract entirely or suspend the performance of the contract for the period that the event subsists. The issue would then arise whether refund of payments for cancellation of bookings due to MCO when full payment is made via digital platform is available for the customers. Thus, there are three issues addressed. The first one is the position of a contract which has frustrated events. Second, the position of contract under force majeure provision. And third, the formation of contract via. In Malaysia, the doctrine of frustration is embodied in Section 57, Section 2, where in this section, there are two scopes of supervening events that may frustrate a contract. First one is event that cause the contract to be impossible to perform, and second is event which is supervening illegal. For event impossible to perform, the word impossible here has not been defined by the Act, but reference can be made to Satya Bharta case, where the court said that the performance of an act may not be literally impossible, but it may be impracticable and useless from the point of view of the object and purpose which the parties had in view, and if an untoward event or change of circumstances totally upsets the very foundation upon which the parties rested their bargain, it can very well be said that the promisor finds it impossible to do the act which he promised. These are the lists where the contract may become impossible to perform, and it includes the pandemic illness which disturbs the performance of parties. Secondly, for unlawful or illegal event, it means that the supervening legislation or regulation which make the contract illegal or where such impose a duty on one of the parties to regularize the contract or its obligation under the contract. This include the banning attendance at event venues following a virus outbreak, and also the preventing of entry to countries in the interest of public health by the government of a country. In order for a party to rely on Section 57, Section 2 of the Contract Act, the contracting party must fulfill all the three requirements. The first one is there must be no provision has been made in the contract. Second, there must be no self-induced frustration. And thirdly, the event must be radically different from that which was undertaken by the contract. As a consequence, a frustrated contract becomes void as stated in Section 57, Section 2, and the contracting parties may be discharged from performing the contractual obligation provided that there is no self-induced frustration. And the party to contract may claim restitution. There is any advantage received under the agreement or contract should be restored back, or make compensation to the other party claiming as stated in Section 15, Section 2 and Section 3 of Civil Law Acts. Second, for force majeure, it is an event or effect that can be neither anticipated nor controlled. It is a contractual provisions allocating the risk of loss if performance becomes impossible or impracticable, especially as a result of an event that the parties could not have anticipated or controlled. It is normally used to describe a contractual term by which one or both of the parties titled to be excused from the performance of the contract, in whole or in part, or is titled to suspend performance or to claim an extension of time for performance upon the happening of a specified event or events beyond his control. Force majeure provision is only applicable when there exists a relevant clause of force majeure in a contract. The one who wishes to invoke the force majeure provision should be able to prove first, existence of such clause in the contract. Second, the occurrence of such preventing event is beyond of his reasonable control. Third, he has taken all reasonable steps to avoid or mitigate the event to occur. Fourth, he needs to comply with all the requirements stated in that particular clause. Thus, for the court, a court will scrutinize the construction of the force majeure clause, whether such clause is wide enough to cover the triggering event, and whether it has affected the performance of the party contractual obligation under the contract. Although Contract Act does not provide any provision for force majeure, however, there are many examples where the courts of Malaysia has enforced and interpret the force majeure clauses in Malaysian cases. There are the difference between frustration and force majeure. We have identified 4 differences, and you can see from the table itself. And third, contract formation via digital platform. The idea stems from a new economic model called as sharing economy. Encompasses the idea that Digital platform do not own the assets or services, but rather they act as intermediaries between the owner of assets or providers of service and the users of the platform in a two-sided market system. The primary role of digital platform is to facilitate the search, organize the matching criteria between the assets or services with the users, and set up reputation and other enhancing mechanism and finalize deal between the owner of assets and the user. Compared to conventional transaction, provider of assets and the guest rarely know each other at the time of the contract. In a sharing economy, the participants are in a weak position as they cannot negotiate nor impose their own terms to the contract, and that the intermediation activity of digital platforms are unregulated with lesser duties as compared to traditional companies. The relationship between the three parties is known as triangular relationship, and it is different from bipolar or linear relationship that exists in conventional transaction. In triangular relationship, the contract is concluded via digital platform. The parties to the contract are the participants and the owner of the assets, excluding the digital platform. The formation of contract between the owner of asset and the participant is mediated through the digital platform, where the owner will later on provide temporary access to the assets on a specified period of time. Significantly, in determining the contractual parties, the main terms of the contract need to be considered, and thus the obligation must fall on the provider of the assets, not on the digital platform. Besides that, the participant also enter into a contract with the digital platform as a service provider that would in turn facilitate the service for payments and other booking services. Evidently, almost all digital platforms provide the terms and policies in their websites, indicating that they self-regulate the bookings made via their digital platforms. Thus, in any event of cancellation or refund of payment, the terms and policies of the digital platform need to be considered in determining the right of the customer. And what will be the effect of COVID-19 to the existing contract? Before party can successfully plead COVID-19 as force majeure event, there are 5 important considerations should be taken into account. First is whether the contract has a force majeure clause, and if the answer is yes, whether COVID-19 outbreak is covered by the clause as force majeure event. Third, whether performance of the contract in question is prevented or hindered as a result of force majeure event. Fourth, whether caution has been taken as to any additional requirements set out by the relevant clause. And lastly, whether the contracting party has taken reasonable steps to mitigate the effect of the outbreak. However, there is no concrete rule as to classify COVID-19 outbreak as force majeure event or not, because it mainly depends on the word used and the scope of the force majeure clause in the contract itself. The use of word to connote illness, such as disease, pandemic, should be reasonably sufficient to include COVID-19 outbreak in force majeure event. However, with the using of word act of God, it is arguably insufficient to carry the meaning of supervening event under the force majeure. The whole contract should be construed together with the force majeure clause so that the court can consider the underlying purpose of the contract and to analyse whether the default party to invoke the force majeure clause has taken reasonable steps to mitigate the situation. COVID-19 virus is a pandemic as announced by WHO on 12 March due to the rapid increase in the number of cases outside the origin country of disease in 2 weeks' time that has affected a growing number of countries. Thus, no one could reasonably foresee the far paralyzing effect of the virus, and no one has taken reasonably precaution to avoid the same. The effect of force majeure is not permanent, as it only subsisting during the pandemic and up until a medical solution. If there is no force majeure clause, then the parties may resort to doctrine of frustration, and the effect when the contract becomes frustrated, it will lead to abrupt stop of a contract, and the continuance of performance become impossible or unlawful. COVID-19, however, does not frustrate the contract, as contract can still be performed unless the delay caused by the pandemic makes the contracting parties incapable to perform the contractual obligation because of the radical difference of nature of such contract. Thus, the implication of COVID-19 should be decided from case-to-case basis, since each case carries different facts. Since MCO was announced during the school holiday, many holiday trips and booking for short-term accommodation were cancelled automatically. However, most of the customers had already paid for the booking, especially for those who are using digital economy platforms such as Airbnb, Booking.com, and Agoda. The issue arose as to the status of such booking money since travel was restricted during MCO. Thus, one who wishes to rely on force majeure clause need to fulfill all the requirements as discussed before. In Airbnb website, it was clearly stated that there were 3 categories of bookings affected by MCO. First, reservation made on or before 14 March with a check-in date within the next 45 days can be cancelled before check-in date. Second, reservation made on or before 14 March with a check-in date more than 45 days and covered under COVID-19 policy. And third, reservation for stays made after 14 March will also not be covered under COVID-19 policy. For Booking.com and Agoda, they were not stated specifically in their websites. Booking.com, however, the policy is only applicable for the guests when they log in into the website. And Agoda does not specifically mention on the general policy of cancellation. It may be different depending on each booking. In conclusion, although frustration and force majeure will always discussed in the same breath, however, there are many aspects to differentiate between the two. In order to determine whether the contract is frustrated or not, it is highly dependent on the case-to-case basis, and it is important for you to look at the policy of the digital economy platform. With that, I end my presentation today. Thank you for listening.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a good day to everyone. So the title of my research is The Winds of Change in the Malaysian Trade Union Recognition Process, an overview. So the author is me, Siti Suraya Abdul Razak, and Dr. Rosazizawati Wamakno. Okay, we are from Azman Hashim International Business School, University Technology Malaysia, JB. Okay, so the trade union is one of the essential elements in tripartite system of industrial relations apart from employer and government. So trade union, it plays an important part to represent the workers' rights in one organization. And trade unions were first organized after the Industrial Revolution period to safeguard the interests of workers, and later became significant politically and socially. Okay. And the idea of trade unionism actually came to Malaya, okay, when the migrant workers came to Malaya and started to form a union, and in order to improve their rights at the workplace, because during that time they were exploited by the employers, okay, and also the capitalists. So later on, Trade Unions Act and also Industrial Relations Act 1967 was introduced in order to regulate the activities of trade union in Malaysia. So my paper, actually, I focus on the collective bargaining aspect, okay, so where recognition becomes the prerequisite or a compulsory thing to do before a collective bargaining can be started. Okay, so in Malaysia, the reality is that collective bargaining is not that popular. Okay, so according to the latest statistic, only 42 out of 132 recognition claims made by the trade unions are successful. Okay, so actually only small numbers where the recognition claim is allowed by the employer, okay, that is found to be successful. Okay, and actually the recognition has been a serious issue in the trade union, and among the issues confronted by the trade unions are such as the complex procedures, okay, where the trade union have to go through all these procedures under the IRA 1967, okay, and then they have to wait for the long period. They have to go to secret ballot, okay, they have to go through the industrial relations department in order for the recognition process to be completed. Okay, there is also a delay in the process, okay, where the delay happen when the employer try to extend the period to the period of giving recognition, okay, or maybe they simply just don't want to reply to the recognition claim. All of these are known as anti-union tactics to the trade union members. Okay. Okay. And the anti-union practices by the employer with the motive to avoid collective bargaining with their workers. Okay. Anti-union practice was also found to happen in the recognition claims, okay, where the employer will try to will try to rearrange the position of the trade union members. Okay, and then the employer also give unreasonable grounds in rejecting the recognition claims. All of this with the motive to avoid collective bargaining action. Okay, so proposed amendment to IRA was tabled to Parliament and has been passed in 2019. So because all of these issues surrounding the trade union under the IRA, so that's why there was a extensive amendment was made to the IRA, and this include the recognition process. Okay, so currently it is waiting for the law to be gazetted. Extensive amendment have been made, including in the area of recognition process. This study, the objective of this study, it will focus on the changes made to the recognition process of trade union in Malaysia and its implication to the trade union and employer. Okay, so this is my findings. Number one, this is the first change that that is highlighted in under the IRA 1967 is that the act, the law no longer give the minister to decide on matters regarding recognition of trade union. So, so after this, the recognition claim only go until to the Director of General of Industrial Relation. So the director will decide on the matters regarding recognition of trade union. Okay, the director no longer need to report the matter to the minister and for the minister to decide on the said matter. So the procedure will stop until the director. So this is actually a positive change to the process, as it will reduce the delay, it will shorten the process itself. Okay, next. The provision on employer's recognition is further extended, which requires the employer to ascertain the scope of membership of the trade union concerned and is in accordance with the Constitution of Trade Union. So actually, one of the biggest challenges in getting recognition is actually on the employer's recognition. Okay, so most of the employer refuse to recognize the trade union recognition. To recognize the claim. So sadly, under the new amendment, under the new law, the employer's recognition is still there, but then and also the provision is further extended where it also require, in case where the employer recognize the trade union, the employer have to ascertain the scope of membership. The employer need to ensure that the membership of the trade union is in accordance, that is, it belongs to the trade union that they wanted to, it belongs to the worker that they wanted to represent. Okay, and number 3, the no longer requires the Director General of Trade Union to ascertain the competency of trade union. This is another highlight changes in the latest IRA, where the DGTU, previously, the recognition claim will go through the Director General of Trade Union. The Director General of Industrial Relation will refer the case to DGTU to ascertain the competency. Okay, the DGTU usually they will try to ascertain whether the trade union belongs to the group of trade, occupation, industry. Okay, but then according to the latest amendment, the DGTU, the Director General of Industrial Relation, is no longer need to refer to the DGTU to ascertain the competency. Okay. And the introduction, this is the latest introduction of new of a new section in the Act, that is the introduction of a provision on sole bargaining rights in the IRA 1967. You see, when the law which requires the DGTU to ascertain the competency has been abolished, so now the effect is that the workers is allowed to be more than one members in different trade union. Okay, they can also become a members in a trade union that is not related to their nature of work. So that's why in situation where more than one trade unions have been accorded recognition by the same employer to represent the same workers, the trade unions concerned may decide among themselves which trade union shall have the sole bargaining rights to represent the workers, and then they have to notify the DGIR. Okay, so let's say the worker they need to have they want to conduct a collective bargaining. Okay, so the worker will inform all the trade unions that he become a member of, and then all of these trade union they have to discuss among themselves and decide who will be the sole bargaining, who will have the sole bargaining rights, and then this one particular trade union will notify the DG. Okay, so so as a conclusion, the amendments to the IRA 1967 are part of the holistic review and in conformity to international standard in bringing transformation to the industrial relation landscape in Malaysia. So actually the amendments, the latest amendment of IRA 1967 is actually bringing towards the spirit of International Labour Organization, actually bring it when if it is recommended that our country to ratify the ILO Convention number 87 in order to enhance and improve the workers' protection. Okay, so this is the amendment to the extensive amendment made to the IRA 1967 is actually good for the workers, okay, good for the trade union. Okay, that means there is a positive changes, okay, to provide for the workers protection. Okay, this effort would actually open more chances for the workers to be represented by a trade union of their preference in the collective bargaining action with the employer. Okay, with that, thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Kamilahwati binti Mohamad from University Science Islam Malaysia. My topic of presentation is the significance of secure land tenure in the perspective of Maqasid of Sharia and Sustainable Development Goals. This paper is co-authored with Associate Professor Dr. Sharifah Zubaidah Said Abdul Qadir from IIUM. As we know, land represents one of the key resources of wealth for a country with economic, social, and environmental dimension. In view of this, Islam considers protection of property and wealth as one of the 5 fundamentals of Sharia or the Maqasid of Sharia. This paper seeks to examine the advantages of safeguarding land tenure to the economic and social well-being, as well as repercussion from failure to uphold the same, particularly in facing the pandemic of COVID-19. The relationship between Maqasid al-Sharia, secure land tenure and sustainable development goals can be seen in this diagram, whereby Maqasid Sharia contains 5 objectives, which are to protect religion, life, lineage, property, and intellect of human beings. So one of the protection emphasized under the Maqasid Sharia is protection of property, and this has a very close relationship with secure land tenure. And by having secure land tenure, it is also the objective of sustainable development goals, whereby secure land tenure can actually achieve the 17 goals of the sustainable development promoted by United Nations. Before we go further, I would like to define several key terms that we are going to use in this paper. The first one is land tenure. Land tenure is defined as the relationship, whether legally or customarily defined among people as individual or groups with respect to land. Second, secure land tenure means the right of all individuals or groups to effective protection by the state against forced evictions. Thirdly, Maqasid al-Sharia means the wisdom observed by the lawgiver in almost all aspects of legal rulings. Its objective is to govern human life and to protect their interests. And lastly, sustainable development goal means the development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. The objectives of Sharia are stated in several verses of Al-Quran. For example, in Surah Al-Anbiya verse 107, Allah says, And we have sent you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not but as the mercy for the al-alamin, mankind, jinns, and all that exists. And similarly, in Surah Yunus, verse 57, Allah says, O mankind, there has come to you a good advice from your Lord, i.e. the Quran, ordering all that is good and forbidding all that is evil, and a healing for that disease of ignorance, doubt, hypocrisy, and differences in your hearts, guidance, and a mercy for the believers. Protection of property as enjoined by Islam can be seen in several dimensions. Firstly, protection of property through the protection of ownership. Second, protection of property through its acquisition and development. Thirdly, protection of property from damage. Fourthly, protection of property through its circulation. And lastly, protection of property through protection of its value. I will continue with the discussion of secure land tenure in the perspective of Sustainable Development Goals. On the 25th September 2015, world leaders adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to ensure sustainable development is adopted and maintained for the benefit of future generations. It contains a set of 17 goals to end poverty, fight inequality and injustice, and tackle climate change. Interestingly, the issue of secure land tenure is closely related to the Sustainable Development Goals. For example, goal number 1, to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. By 2030, the target is to ensure all men and women, in particular the poor and the vulnerable, have equal rights to economic resources as well as the basic services, ownership and control over the land. Goal number 2, to end hunger, achieve food security and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. And goal number 5, to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Member states are required to undertake reforms to give women equal rights to economic resources as well as access to ownership and control over land. This diagram illustrates the relationship between secure land tenure, pandemic COVID-19, food supply chain, and food security. It is important to stress here that secure land tenure is vital to ensure and develop more productive agriculture to provide food security to a country. These slides explain the links between security of land tenure and food security. Now we are going to look at the issue of security of land tenure in Malaysia. As we know, the land registration system in Malaysia is based on torrent system, which requires all the links to be registered. And once registered, the person will acquire an indivisible title or interest. One of the main issues with regard to the security of land tenure in Malaysia is land fraud. Land fraud occurs due to several reasons. For example, weaknesses in the land registration system, weaknesses in conveyancing practices, poor security measures in the implementation of computerized land registration system, fraudulent individuals, and corruption. The occurrence of land fraud has created insecure land tenure, whereby the registered owner of the land is wrongfully deprived of their property, and in some circumstances they are not properly indemnified because there is no statutory compensation scheme under the Malaysian torrent system. The insecure land tenure will actually, in the long run, discourage economic activities, including agriculture, and this will affect food security to the country. To ensure secure land tenure, several measures have to be taken by the government. First, to overcome the weaknesses in the land registration system that pave the road to land fraud by enhancing the standard operating procedures at land office. Second, to tighten the conveyancing process. Third, to enhance the security measures in the implementation of computerized land administration system to avoid digital fraud, and lastly, to provide a statutory compensation scheme under the nation torrent system to indemnify any person who have been wrongfully deprived of their land due to fraud or other causes. As a conclusion, man as the trustee of the earth need to administer the earth in accordance with the command of Allah and ensure sustainable development for the benefit of future generations.